I think I told you guys after COVID, it's not about money anymore. I want to be in business with people that I'm aligned with and that I have good relationships with. And
that was Dana White just a few months.
So here's what went down that made Dana White absolutely lose his mind. We're talking about Alex Pereira, the guy who was supposedly tight with the UFC president just months back. Well, that friendship just got nuked because Alex apparently inked this massive deal completely outside UFC territory. And Dana, he's having a complete meltdown. Not just because he lost one of his biggest draws, but because of exactly who Alex decided to partner with. Let me walk you through this chaos.
I think I told you guys after COVID, it's not about money anymore. I want to be in business with people that I'm aligned with and that I have good relationships with. And you don't know who anybody is until the shit hits the fan. And when the shit hit the fan, I found out who was who and what was what. And
the time
when word hit Dana's desk about this alleged deal, sources say the man went completely nuclear. We're talking about the kind of explosion that had seasoned UFC executives clearing out of the building. This wasn't your typical Dana White tantrum. This was something else entirely. The veins popping, voice echoing through closed doors, profanity that would make cage fighters blush. This was pure rage, the kind you get when someone you trusted just stabbed you in the back.
A tactical battle, we'll say, in the main event.
Yeah.
Crowned a new champion tonight, though. I guess, can you give us your initial thoughts on the main event tonight?
Yeah. It was, not what I expected. I expected a lot more shooting, expected a lot more exchanges. Yeah.
I don't know if we're going to see Alex back here or not tonight, but we haven't seen him yet.
What we're hearing is that this wasn't some basic endorsement deal. This was allegedly a commercial arrangement so huge it threatened every exclusive partnership the UFC had locked down. Multi-million-dollar territory, the kind of money that could compete with what the UFC itself was throwing around. And it was structured to completely bypass all those restrictions that usually keep UFC fighters under organizational control.
Dana, going back to Alex tonight, there's been a little bit of talk about, he's everywhere around the world, right? He's flying to Sydney, he's doing all this stuff when he could be, maybe training at home. Do you feel like that maybe affected his performance?
That's a good question. I think that's a question definitely for him to answer. I definitely don't know his schedule. I know he's been bouncing around.
White's words carried an
The timing of this bombshell couldn't have been worse. Pereira had just demolished Magomed Ankalaev in 80 seconds at UFC 320, reminding everyone exactly why he's one of the most feared knockout artists walking the planet. This came right after his decision loss to Ankalaev at UFC 313, a fight that even Dana called disappointing for the lack of action.
I would say yes, that Sheikh Turkey and Saudi are the dominant players in boxing right now. And basically, I'm going to run and manage the business for them. This is not an easy business to be in.
But here's the thing that had been eating at Dana for months before this contract situation exploded. Pereira had been jet-setting all over the globe. Sydney, Rome, you name it, racking up frequent flyer miles while his training was supposedly taking a back seat. The guy's got partnerships with Stake.com, deals with Spreeb for their aviator game, estimated net worth sitting between 4 and 5 million. His UFC paydays were solid, around 2,000 for UFC 307 and nearly 3,000 for UFC 300, but this alleged outside deal was reportedly designed to make all of that look like pocket change.
I thought I was busy. I didn't realize what busy really was until the last couple of weeks. But yeah, we're gonna. I think I told you this to you guys before, but we're gonna invest like $10 to $12 million into jiu-jitsu over the next year. So we're gonna go big on that. We're obviously going big on boxing. We're gonna continue to do what we do with the UFC, and then switching Power Slap over to YouTube.
Dana has always preached about partnership and loyalty in business relationships. He's the guy who famously told a major sponsor to shove their money when they demanded he remove a pro-Trump video from his social media. That's the level of principle we're dealing with here. So when Pereira allegedly signed this massive deal outside UFC control, it hit Dana right in his core beliefs about how business should work. Industry insiders are going crazy trying to figure out what this alleged contract actually involves. Some think it's a major streaming platform, building a sports entertainment division. Others point to international gaming companies looking to expand into Latin American and North American markets. There are even whispers about a consortium of investors trying to build a competing combat sports promotion with Pereira as the centerpiece. Whatever the specifics, this alleged deal represents everything Dana has spent decades trying to prevent. The UFC's entire business model depends on controlling all commercial aspects of their fighters' careers. From sponsorships to media appearances to competitive opportunities, it all flows through the organization. This alleged massive contract threatens to blow a massive hole in that carefully constructed wall of control. The relationship between Dana and his fighters has always operated on this unspoken understanding that the UFC comes first in all commercial considerations. Individual promotional opportunities exist within a framework that ultimately serves the organization's interests. This has been tested before, like when Brock Lesnar promoted Coors Light during his post-fight interview when Bud Light was a major UFC sponsor. That got Lesnar what he called a real talking to from Dana, showing just how seriously the UFC president takes sponsor relationships. For Pereira, the stakes are way higher given what we're hearing about the scope of this outside contract. His charitable work through Instituto Poatan in São Paulo, providing free combat sports training, English lessons, and computer classes to over 700 kids, gives him this social mission that goes beyond just making money. This humanitarian angle complicates any conflict with the UFC because Dana has to balance his business concerns against the public relations nightmare of appearing to block a fighter's legitimate charitable interests. Pereira's story of overcoming poverty and alcoholism has connected with fans worldwide in a way that goes beyond typical athlete-fan relationships. This is a guy who used to watch martial arts classes from outside because his family couldn't afford the fees. That experience drives his commitment to providing those same opportunities for free through his foundation. He's donated over 1,000 food boxes to his hometown and put $120,000 toward flood relief in southern Brazil. This isn't just PR stuff. This is genuine philanthropy. The contractual situation gets interesting when you look at the competitive fighting side. Pereira has been clear that he has a contract with the UFC and that Jake Paul knows he can't just go fight elsewhere. Suggesting Paul's callouts are mostly promotional noise. The Brazilian has one professional boxing fight and about 28 amateur boxing matches under his belt, showing his striking credentials go way beyond kickboxing. But this alleged massive contract reportedly sidesteps all these fighting restrictions by focusing on commercial activities rather than competitive stuff, finding gaps in contractual language that didn't anticipate large-scale commercial arrangements outside the fighting context. This timing is brutal for the UFC because they're in the middle of unprecedented expansion. Dana's attention is split across multiple business ventures, including his move into boxing through partnerships with Turki Al-Sheikh in Saudi Arabia. He's acknowledged investing 10 to 12 million into jiu-jitsu, going big on boxing, continuing UFC operations, and moving Power Slap to YouTube. That's a portfolio of combat sports properties, demanding constant attention. Dana has admitted this year will show whether he can sustain his current pace across all these business ventures. Questions are being raised about when he might need to delegate responsibilities, and against this backdrop of organizational expansion and personal strain, Pereira's alleged massive outside contract demanded immediate attention at exactly the moment when Dana was already stretched thin. The UFC's response to this situation will have implications way beyond the immediate parties involved. Other fighters are watching closely to see how the organization handles a champion who allegedly signed a significant deal outside UFC control. The precedent set by this conflict will shape future negotiations between the UFC and its roster for years to come. Dana's recent 5-year deal with Monster Energy, placing their brand center Octagon, shows the value the organization places on exclusive commercial relationships that can't be diluted by competing arrangements involving individual fighters. Pereira's Zumk title defense against Carlos Ulberg, reportedly scheduled for January 2025 at T-Mobile Arena on the UFC's inaugural Paramount Plus broadcast, means the organization has significant interest in maintaining a productive relationship with their light heavyweight champion, regardless of whatever commercial disputes might be brewing behind the scenes. Here's what this really comes down to. Dana White built his empire on control, and this alleged contract represents the ultimate loss of that control. The UFC has generated record revenues exceeding $1.3 billion without significant contributions from Conor McGregor, showing they can thrive without any single fighter. But Pereira's unique appeal, his knockout power, his compelling backstory, his global commercial reach, makes him difficult to alienate entirely. This represents a broader tension within combat sports between organizational control and individual athlete rights that's only going to intensify as the sport continues growing and generating unprecedented revenues. Pereira represents the new model of fighter commercial independence, a champion who understands his earning window is limited by the physical demands of combat sports and seeks to maximize income potential during his peak star power years. The resolution will provide a template for future negotiations, setting precedents that will shape the industry for years and influence how the next generation of fighters approaches relationships with the organizations that employ them. The question is whether Dana's explosive reaction will ultimately accommodate the commercial ambitions of his most marketable champion, or whether this conflict will create a rupture that can't be repaired. At stake is the fundamental question of how much autonomy UFC fighters can claim over their commercial identities, when those identities were largely constructed through the platform the organization provided. Dana has always maintained that the UFC creates stars rather than simply employing them, and this creative role entitles the organization to significant control over how those stars monetize their fame. So where does this leave everything? Dana White built his empire on control. Every sponsorship, every appearance, every dollar flows through him. That's not ego, that's business, and for 20 years, nobody seriously challenged it, until now. Alex Pereira isn't just another fighter trying to make quick money on the side. This is someone who came from absolutely nothing, literally watching martial arts classes through windows because his family couldn't afford fees. He built himself into a two-division champion, a knockout artist, a global brand, and somewhere along the way realized something dangerous. He doesn't need the UFC as much as they need him. That's what made Dana explode. Not the money, not even the contract itself. It's what it represents, a crack in the foundation. Because if Pereira gets away with this, every champion watching right now is taking notes. Every manager is making calls. Every agent is looking for the same loophole. The UFC will survive this, they always do. But the game, the balance of power between fighters and the organization, that might never be the same. Dana White exploded for a reason. He saw the future, and it absolutely terrified him.